I'd like to welcome everyone who came out this evening for our annual meeting. We've got at least one, I'll call him a distinguished visitor, Mark Cochran, representing our representative John Dingle, is with us tonight. My lovely wife is here tonight. We have our committee members and some interested residents. So once again, thanks for coming to see us. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:15. Everyone is present. So we will step into, we have entirely two motions. This will affect how we do business all year. So first, I'll introduce the first motion. Actually, I'll have ask Clerk Ranka to introduce.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we adopt the bylaws, Robert's Rules of Order, 10th edition, and Robert's Rules of Order newly revised in brief.
Okay, I'll second that motion. And you can give us the background on why we adopt Robert's Rules.
Robert's Rules are the way that we govern the meeting, both the Township Board meeting and also all of the Township Commission and meetings, or Commission and Committee meetings, basically to keep rule of order in the meetings and to keep a standing operating procedure.
So by taking on Robert's Rules, we are predictable and standardized. All our meetings are run the same way every time. Everyone knows where we stand, what we can and cannot, should or should not do. Discussion among the board on the adoption of Robert's Rules. All right, with none offered. Those in favor of adopting Robert's Rules for the Board of Trustees, the commissions and the committees for the fiscal year of 13 through 14, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None offered. We readopt Robert's Rules. Mrs. Gray, would you hold up the Robert's Rules of Order newly revised? If you hear the term RONR, that's what she's going to be digging out. Rules of Order newly revised. Let's step to motion number 2. And I'll ask Clerk Ranka once again.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we approve the March 26, 2012 annual meeting minutes.
Okay, seconded by Treasurer Van Oss.
The history of this is just that we approve the meeting minutes from the previous annual meeting at the next annual meeting.
Okay, any discussion from the board on the minutes from 2012? All right, with none offered, those in favor of approving the minutes from 2012 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None offered. Those minutes stand approved. That concludes our motions this evening. We'll move into some interesting information. I'll give just a quick background, and I just practiced this with some new residents on the history of the annual meeting. Way back when, there are 20 states that have townships, and the annual meeting was that time in 1847 when the township statutes were originally adopted by the state legislature. This was when the residents, all of whom live within this basically 6x6 square, so you could walk or ride a buggy or a horse and be to your polling place within probably an hour. And you could get in and vote, and at their annual meetings, they would vote on things like what they were doing in the township for that year. Vote on expenditures, vote on a budget, vote on ordinances. That's when the annual meeting of the electors was held. That was the reason it was held. Now, much of the voting is done either at the general elections, the primaries in August, the general elections in November, and the rest of the duties have been taken away from the electorate and afforded to your Board of Trustees, and we vote on everything every other week. So this is more of a tradition for us to have the annual meeting. Again, this is my 5th one. I enjoy it. We get a chance to see some new faces. You get a chance to see some new faces. We'll introduce many of the commission committee chairs, and just glad to have you this evening. So we're continuing the tradition. I think it's worthwhile. That, I'm going to turn it over to the township manager to introduce some of the managers and some of the township employees who are present. Mr. Riem. Let me introduce Township Manager Dale Riem, who basically is responsible for everything. So, Dale, with that, I'll put you in charge of the rest of the meeting.
So can I move to adjourn this whole evening's affair?
We'll just pick it up in the next meeting anyway, Dale, so no, you're not getting off that easy.
Well, we can bypass that one, too. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to take a brief moment and just introduce the township staff that are here this evening, as well as the consultants. And to my right, Ann Darsnick, Township Finance Director. across the board table, Sharon Gray, Deputy Clerk. And far right and the side is Sohail Sabak and Russ Whitman from CE Rains Company. Tom Montleone, our Township Auditor. And here on the left in the front is Police Chief Joe Porcerelli, Commerce Park Airfield Manager Michael Duker, Thomas Sorty, Township Attorney, Lorinda Beneteau, DPS Assistant, Barry Sedlock, DPS Director, Tim Rooney, Recreation Director, and Duncan Murdoch, Fire Chief. And I don't believe I've missed anyone else unless they're hiding in the back. Obviously, there are numerous other township staff members that could not attend tonight, as well as a few of the consultants. But on behalf of the township, I'd like to thank them for their service and let them know that we definitely do appreciate them. And we're here. Our commodity is just that, community service. And don't ever hesitate to approach us, contact us, or ask questions about the community.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ream. If you noticed, there weren't a whole lot of names mentioned. We have a very lean township staff, but we're still trying to provide the same level of service for our 10,000 residents as we always have. We've got a lot of staff working real hard. Sometimes we can't answer your calls as quickly as we'd like to, but I think considering how we've downsized, I think we're doing a pretty good job, and hope you feel the same way. With that, let's see, we're going to introduce the commission and committee members by the trustees. The trustees serve as liaisons to the various commissions and committees. The commissions and committees is where most of the heavy lifting, as I call it, is done. Groups of unpaid volunteers, unpaid for the most part, volunteers, your neighbors, your fellow residents, who are working together to keep the township running. So with that, I'm going to begin with Trustee Budney to introduce the commissions he is liaison to, and any members who are present, please point them out so I can at least say thanks.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Brian. It's with great pleasure that I talk about the two commissions that I'm on, which is the Public Service Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Both of them, I think, are very important. The Public Service Commission, of course, does an overview of providing you, the residents, with water coming into your house as well as water going out of your house. They also make sure that there's someone to pick up your trash every week, and to a much lesser extent, they do some work on our roads, but to a far greater extent, they do a lot of advocating with the county to try and get our roads fixed, and it's not a simple task. With that said, the commission is made up of James Nelson, who is here. Jim, if you just raise your hand, stand up. Sit down. He'll be good on the commission. Jim is brand new to our commission. In fact, he will have his first meeting in April. Next is Ron Wilder. Ron joined us at the end of 2012. Les Schmidtke, who worked for the township for a number of years in the DPS department, and brings a wealth of knowledge of all the pipes and things that are underground on Groseal. So we're glad to have him on board. Next, we have Phil Kennedy, who's the secretary of our commission. Phil also joined us in 2012, but in the earlier part of the year. Next, we have John Riley, who is our vice chair. I note on my notes here they have that he has been on since 2000. I believe he actually was on longer. He was on the DPS commission. Then he actually became treasurer of the fine island of Groseal. And then when he left that position, he got back on the DPS. John brings a wealth of knowledge in that area to the commission, and we're glad to have him. And finally, we have Bill Kostick. Bill is here today. Bill, if you'd just show yourself. I know you know how to get up and down. So. And Bill is our chairman, and I can't express enough how lucky this island is to have someone like Bill in charge of a commission with the wealth of knowledge that he has, and with the desire and the commitment to that commission to make sure that we take care of the people of Groseal. I would also like to add that I consider him still part of our commission, and that's the gentleman sitting next to me, Ted Van Oss. He was the liaison to the commission until this year, and he passed the torch on to me, but he still sits with us and has, again, a vast knowledge of what's going on in that area and shares that with us. And believe me, people, you are very lucky to have people like that. So I would like to thank all those people, not only for their commitment to the commission, but also to the island of Groseal. Thank you. I also want to add that there are two other members, not part of the commission, but who we could not function without, and that's Barry Sedlock, who is the department head of the public service, and Lorinda Bettenau, who is the administrative manager. They get us a wealth of knowledge, keep us up to date on problems in that area, and we could not function properly without them. So thank you guys for your service to our commission and to the community. The other commission that I am lucky enough to be liaison for is probably the least known commission, and that's the Zoning Board of Appeals. This commission is different than any other commission on the island simply because it doesn't deal in projects or spending money or anything like that. It deals with live cases and making decisions for or against residents of the island on things that they want to do to their property. If you want to build something and you're not going to meet the zoning ordinances, you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a waiver. I would say probably 90+% of the cases that the Zoning Board of Appeals deals with that type of case. Also, if someone wants to do something to their property and it's okayed by the township, a neighbor or some other resident on the island can appeal that approval, and the Zoning Board of Appeals also ends up hearing that appeal. The bottom line is, though, that that commission made up of residents of Groseal have to make determinations for or against other residents on Groseal, so it's somewhat difficult. With that in mind, I would like to introduce our board, which we do have a full board at this time. Our newest member is Gary Bailey. Gary is, in fact, going to join us tomorrow for his first meeting, and we have 3 appeals tomorrow, so he'll get a baptism under fire. John Carnego, who has been on that board since 2009. Robert Pierce is our secretary and has been on there since 2002. Jacqueline Snow Davies has been on the commission since 2004. She started as an alternate, is now a regular, and is our vice chair. And our commission is aptly run by James Bittinger. He's been on since 2001 and does a fine job of leading that commission. The Zoning Board of Appeals also has an alternate. Our alternate is Charles Voino. Charles just started with us in 2013 and in fact got to sit in on a case our last meeting, so he's already had his baptism. But we have an alternate because we are dealing with appeals of the residents, and they want to move those along. We got to make sure that we have a quorum, so we have an alternate in case somebody can't make it or a couple people can't make it. We can still try and have a quorum. That is the Zoning Board of Appeals. I would also, I'm sorry, it's not the total board. We also have a representative from the Planning Commission. Ann Yavorowski is our representative from the Planning Commission, and then myself as liaison. Also, as with the Public Service Commission, we have a lot of help from two employees of the township, Lori Tarazalewski and Anthony Gray. He didn't want Lori to outdo him with the two names, so he wanted me to have him Gray. So Tony, again, those guys do a lot to get us the information we need so that we can proceed in a comfortable and quick manner on these appeals and get people their answers. And and I would only like to just thank everybody on the commission for the wonderful job that they do and for the time that they spend giving back to the community, as well as to thank Lori and Tony. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We'll turn it over to Trustee Tom Malvesto. Introduce Tom, and he can talk about, he's working on a couple of commissions himself. It's all yours, Tom.
All I can say is, Jim, you're a tough act to follow. I'm out of breath just waiting.
Hey, Tom, don't forget that.
All right, well, I was lucky enough to be appointed to an interim position as a trustee about a year and a half ago, and then you're all aware that I was fortunate enough to be voted in as a trustee this past election. So I'm serving on as a liaison between two of the boards, two of the commissions. We'll start out with the Community Recreation Commission. We all know Tim Rooney. He's a gentleman that's got endless, boundless heaps of energy, and is always thinking of a way to get out of the box to figure out how he's going to get something done. And he and his employees do just one tremendous job. But they're also supported by a commission. All I can say is the rec department probably one department hasn't done so much with so little, with so few. They really work their fingers to the bone to make things happen. Walt Kotcher is the chairperson. Bill Moreau would be our vice chairman. Lee Schelke would be our secretary. Then there's Ethel Yaps, John Conroy, Greg Merling, Ann Hayner-Magrin, Helena Woodward-Ryan, Mike Swales, and of course myself as liaison. And they've always got something going. There's always a project, and those projects seem to move along. Probably if the board didn't drag our feet, things would get done quicker. But they're always looking for a way to come up with the funds to fund these projects and make the residents on Grosse Ile's lives more enjoyable, give their kids something to do, you name it. The other commission that I'm part of is the Fire Commission. And nobody can say enough about our fire department. And I'll go so far as to say as our police department as well. But we have a volunteer fire department that serves this island 24/7 without question. They're the guys that are woke up 2 or 3 times on a given night to make a call, be a rescue, be it a fire, without question, without hesitation. And they're just a great group of guys. And Duncan Murdoch, Chief Murdoch, has done a tremendous job with the people he has. And by the way, the numbers of the volunteer fire department and rescue service is down from what it used to be considerably. And they're making over 600 calls in a given year. And if you think about yourself, over the period of 365 days, if your phone rang, basically twice a night. After a while, you get tired of it. But these guys don't, and that doesn't include the training and that they have to do. It takes 2 years just to become a volunteer fireman, and then every week they have training. Every month they have additional training. Great group of guys. On the commission, Stuart Keeler is the chairperson. Stu's been around for a long time. I've known Stu for a long while as well, and he's a great guy. Our vice chair is Kurt Korneffel. Kurt, I believe, has been a resident his entire life. Of course, you got Chief Murdoch, Jerry Bringard, Gordon Miles, and myself as liaison. And I just want to thank both these commissions for the time they put in, the work they do, and always able to support the departments that they're representing. They're a great group of people. We owe them a big thanks. I'll let it go at that.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I'll move on to Trustee Posias. Wally.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, pardon me. Time flies when you're having fun, huh? My duty is to be the liaison to two committees, and the first one is a rather new one. A year ago, if you look in your minutes, you will see that the Bike Path Committee was just getting formed. There's a guy sitting a couple of seats away from me that's looking at me. Huh? This is a new one. His name is Ranka, and he did a lot to get that established, and he put together quite a team. And when he got him running 80 miles an hour, he turned it over to me. This is the fastest moving group of people I've ever worked with in my life as far as getting things done. Brian Pollock is a bundle of energy. Brian's got a couple of sweetheart little girls that hang around my neighborhood. A good family man and really, really cares about things for community, things for bike paths and pedestrian use. And it shows. When it's natural and it shows, it's appreciated. So, Brian, I'd like to give you a personal thanks for that. His crew is a great crew. Gary Bailey, who has volunteered for more work, is tireless when it comes to chasing after Barry and chasing after Sohail to get answers. Wonderful input. Aaron and Himmelsbach, Jane Fiegel, Alan Veliquette, one of our Grosse Hills finest, also on this committee, and a hard charger when it comes to putting together the Promoting Active Communities survey that we're working on now. Rob Albrecht brings up the rear. What a group. They're hard to keep up with, but we're very lucky to have this as a group. And I'll mention the other committee next, and I'd like to make a mention of something together for both committees. The Greenways Open Space Committee is a group that's been pretty settled. They're rolling and established and have quite a set agenda when it comes to taking care of open space and the things that happen in it. Cliff St. Pierre, who's a longtime resident and just a longtime good guy, chairs that committee. Patricia Nielsen, my buddy Woody Clark. Woody, raise your hand. Don't come up now. Just raise your hand. Daryl Ferlisky, Pat Selby, and another good old longtime friend, and Art Kester. Art is, Art is to Greenways and Open Space. He's a demigod, I think. I'm pleased that I have been able to work as liaison between the two of these groups. And what I'm telling you is that what I wanted to mention as far as both committees is that they're now starting to embark on a common interests joint meeting. Both committees have a lot to do with recreational paths and bike paths and paths through the open space and maintaining open space. And both chairmen and their committees are exploring sitting down to have a quick startup of a joint think tank session to see what we can do as far as working together for common needs. Most of the successful committees and commissions in other places that have non-motorized transportation establishments do this. So I'm really excited to see that we're going to we're going to join both of them together, not necessarily as a common committee, but certainly with some common and shared goals. And so I would like to thank every one of you. Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Proziask. We'll move on to Trustee Lauren Smith.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm fortunate to serve on 2 individual commissions. The Festival Commission, I love because they are informal and fun. They're a roll-up-the-sleeves working group, and they seem to prove themselves over and over to be the experts in what they're doing, providing fun for island residents as well as the folks off the island. Amy Longton is our chair. Chad Novak, who's in the audience here. Chad, thank you. Bethany Rista, Julie Cordes, William Moreau, David Zula, and Ann Darzniak. And Tim Rooney is our rec director, and he brings a lot of enthusiasm and excitement to this group. And I'm going to shamelessly plug that if anybody knows of anybody who wants to sponsor things at Island Fest, we have plenty of opportunities. So if if you so feel that you want to put your corporate name on it, talk to Tim Rooney. He's ready for us, or ready for you. The other commission is the Communications Commission, and this bunch is a very passionate group of people, and I think that we have a full commission now, and we're driving forward to deliver a new website, hopefully within the next several months. So that's very exciting news. Ted Fournier is our cable administrator. Kathy Walker, she's present, and she is our chairwoman. Robert Arndt, Richard Nielsen, Udo O'Connor, Sean Payton, and Sharon Thomas are the other members, and we're really excited to be part of the commission as well as delivering services to the township. One of the things that I guess I didn't really realize when I signed up as a trustee or decided to go down this route was how much work it actually takes to do things around here, and it does amaze me. And the volunteers that put in their time and their effort and their energy and show up and give us their dedication, it surprises me and it pleases me, and it makes me feel really good to be part of not only those commissions but as part of this board and part of a community that cares. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. We'll move on to the clerk's report. Clerk Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So I was going to try and switch the agenda first and go with the Commission and Liaison report recognitions, but it'd probably be inappropriate for the clerk to change the agenda. So we'll start with the State of the Township Clerk's Office. Just start with bringing things up with the mission statement. The Clerk's Office will respect the rich historical heritage of Crowsdale Township and will strive to provide conscious service to the public, the Township Board, and the Township Administration. To be prepared to meet the ever-changing demands for future by attending necessary continuing education programs and seminars and implementing the information learned to improve the effectiveness of the staff in serving the community. To oversee and educate township staff and officials on the procedures for collecting, retaining, archiving, and effectively disseminating all official township information of record compliant with the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Meetings Act. And most importantly, to manage all federal, state, local, and school elections efficiently, accurately, and fairly following Michigan election laws, and to continually strive to maintain strict voting security measures at all time. The clerk's statutory duties are numerous, extremely technical, and legally essential for the proper operation of municipal government. The clerk's office is often the first public telephone contact that callers experience when calling the township hall for information or service, and most often is the office visited when residents and non-residents arrive at township hall looking for information or assistance. The clerk's staff strives to provide accurate information in a friendly and professional manner. The Township Clerk's Office is responsible for a wide variety of services and information, which includes providing guidance for record keeping, and the keeping for recording and keeping of the official records, books, and papers of the Township Board and Commission meetings, the proper maintenance of accounts payable, and other financial ledgers within the uniform chart of accounting throughout the Township Finance Department, as prescribed by the State Treasurer, and working along with the Township Treasurer to oversee the distribution of all monies paid out under the authorization of the proper Township authorities. In addition, the clerk and deputy clerk and their staff handle the processing of public bids, solicitation permits, coordination and distribution of Freedom of Information Act requests, publishing of public notices and agendas under the Open Meetings Act, and providing the direction to the township departments to maintain the records and documents of the township as prescribed under the official records retention schedule of the state of Michigan. The appointed deputy clerk, Ms. Sharon Gray, is authorized to act on behalf of the clerk in all matters except when voting on the township business and in the event of the clerk's absence, sickness, death, or other disability. The deputy clerk assists the clerk in all matters pertaining to the township office or pertaining to the office, and additionally may also assist members of the township board and other township departments and commissions. So just a little bit of background and history on what the clerk's office does. Goals for this year are simple and straightforward. Number one, to incorporate elected officials' email into the township electronic mail system and to enable improved retention of electronic correspondence and records. Number two, to move towards paperless board meeting e-packets to improve township's financial and ecological position. And number three, to improve and expand access to the commission minutes and agendas online. Members of the clerk staff, past clerk is obviously Uto Connor, who left the clerk's office in tremendous shape, and our deputy clerk, Sharon Gray, who is a consummate professional with a tremendous amount of depth and knowledge in her subject matters. So without Sharon, we'd be in deep trouble. So thank you very much, Sharon. As well with Brian Friel, who is Elections and Records Assistant. From a commissions report standpoint, we'll start off with the Police Commission, which is chaired by Carl Bletcher, served by Joe Dixon, Paul Anderson, and Robert Zelasco. And a little bit of rundown on the police department and what they've accomplished over the previous year. The mission statement of the police department is to enhance the quality of life on Grosio by providing prompt, professional, community-oriented police services while enforcing state statutes and local ordinances for a safe and secure community. Some highlights from last year: 8,135 calls for service, 438 written reports, 115 traffic accident reports, 600 traffic citations. While there were 600 traffic citations, there were 836 notices to appear, which is not a ticket, but an ability for someone who has something wrong to correct it in a short period of time. 1,208 verbal warnings for traffic offenses. 159 arrests made, of which 107 were misdemeanor arrests, 19 were felony arrests, 33 were warrant arrests. Delivered 454 courtesy security notices, so when they're driving around 24 hours a day and they see something in your house, that maybe a garage door that's left open all night, they will let you know of such a thing. There were 108 Detective Bureau complaints to investigate, and 230,000 miles of total patrol miles driven. So a lot more happens on our wonderful little island than we all think and know about. A tremendous amount of training by the sworn officers, by the clerks, and the dispatchers. From some animal control officer highlights, there were 821 calls for animal control officer service, resulting in a number of things, but highlighted by 134 verbal warnings and 20 violations issued. Some of the community policing programs: the bicycle rodeo, DARE program, the New World computer data update, the open house on 9/11, Operation Chill bicycle safety, reading awareness, Safety Town, school resource office program, the Sims annual basketball game, and stranger danger fingerprint recognition, much of which was enabled by Detective Ken Pellin, who writes a tremendous amount of grants for our department and brings in a lot of money for us. Some of the grant programs this year were Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant, Operation Stone Garden Homeland Security Grant, Party Patrol Grant, Safe Communities Grant, and the Semca Tobacco Compliance Grant. In addition, the deer call this year was very successful again, resulting in 108 deer removed from the population. which also then resulted in a little over 5,000 pounds of meat donated to local homeless shelters. In closing, members of the Township Police Department would like to thank our residents for their support. Working together, we can keep Crozille one of the safest communities in Michigan and provide a quality environment for all islanders. Other commission that I'm fortunate to serve on is the Planning Commission, chaired by John Schweikert and served by Jay Frucci, Steve Lemoyne, Michelle or Mickey Bartlett, Ann Jaworowski, Jim Davis, Brian Pollock, and Cheryl Hurt. We are fortunate for the first time in a long time to be at full strength from the Planning Commission. Some of the highlights from the Planning Commission last year, the Commission conducted 4 regular meetings during the year, which complies with the requirements of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. Actually, I think we met a few more times than that. From a development review standpoint, under the State Enabling Act and the Township Zoning Ordinance, the Planning Commission is given the task of reviewing development activities impacting the Township and its residents. During 2012, the Commission considered the following development proposals. Accessory building on Bellevue, which was approved. Sketch plan review on Concord, which was approved conditionally and then ultimately approved. Sketch plan review for converting existing retail office space into residential units on Macomb Street, which was approved. Site plan review on Macomb Street to redevelop property with 1 building and 2 medical office tenants, which has conditional approval. And then pre-application conference for West Shore Golf and Country Club, which was no action taken at this time. So lots going on from the Planning Commission, despite not a whole lot of building going on. And just in closing, after listening to the various my various colleagues going through the commission list, decided to do a quick tally. There are 116 members of our community that serve commissions and committees. So these are the folks that are doing the heavy lifting and the brains behind a lot of what happens on the township, in addition, obviously, to the staff and to the board. But it's 116 of our fellow residents that have a lot of knowledge and passion and dedication that they're serving our community with.
Thank you, Clerk Ranka. Mr. Treasurer Van Oss.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll try to keep mine short. Basically, the State of the Treasurer's Office for 2012 to 2013 fiscal years come to an end, and we continue to work together towards mutual goals of sustaining the Treasurer's Office mission statement, which includes to efficiently collect and distribute tax revenues due to gross sale, collect and process all township receipts, invest idle funds. We get paid once a year, which certain times of year we have a very large amount of revenue that sits in our coffers that we'll be spending through the years, and it becomes quite a challenge to invest and protect those. The banking system has gotten much better as far as stability goes, so it's a little bit easier, but our requirements are to try to protect or to actually protect all of this money, which makes it pretty difficult for large sums of money, and to continue to serve the public in the most efficient and courteous manner. All the members of the staff, the treasurer's staff, and the financial staff belong to several associations and do a lot of educational programming and are networking all the time to improve their performance. Grosse Ile Township Treasurer's website is constantly updated and is probably one of the most active websites because all the tax information for all the township is available on there. So it probably gets more hits than anything else, a lot of it from the real estate people. Online payment option has been established for many residents through e-filing. The tax collection and distribution for 2012-2013 ended very well. More than $24 million of taxes were collected and distributed to the counties and the schools. Wayne County allowed municipalities this year to deliver their rolls and other reports electronically, and Grosse Ile was the first one to take advantage of that
which saves a lot of hauling books down to Wayne County and then going back down and picking them up, and it really saved a lot of time and effort. Investing idle funds in compliance with our investment policy to obtain the best interest initiative available. The interest that we collect continues to be at record lows, but it's getting a little better. Just for an example, the interest we collected in 2008 was $907,000, and the interest we collected this year was $28,000 on basically the same sum of money. But it's getting better because at the low we were at $22,000, so at least the trend is upward. Our staff assists residents whenever they come in. If you have any questions or you're not really into getting into the computers, you can certainly come in here and talk to our assessing department or talk to our tax department, and they will help you through the process of finding out what your taxes are and how they're established, and they'll give you any assistance you need. I'd like to give a lot of credit to the staff that works for my department. Barb McMahon, who's worked for us for many years, is currently out on medical for a month or so. She had some surgery she had to have done. And Sharon Gray was kind enough to loan Brian Friel over so he could do his job and her job while she's gone. That kind of cooperation is throughout the township. Annette Wordsmith is my deputy treasurer, and Annette can answer any questions that you might have, regardless of what they are. And if you have any questions for me or the department, my suggestion is go to Annette first, because I'll probably just send you over there anyway. And Carolyn Johnson, who's our payroll clerk and payables assistant, and I don't know that I've seen anybody work as tirelessly as Carolyn does. She's always busy doing something. And, of course, she's the highlight of the office, being the payroll clerk. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Ann Darsnick, who has just done a wonderful job for me. I mean, she's kept my head above water and been most cooperative in anything that we need to do. Ann is a true asset. I have to get on her occasionally because she's so conservative that sometimes just drives me nuts. But you as taxpayers can be grateful that she's as conservative as she is. She's done a wonderful job with the books. It's very difficult to spend a dollar, and that's the way it should be because they're your dollars. And Ann, I really appreciate what you do. I sit on two commissions. I want to take a moment to thank Jim Budney for stepping up to the DPS commission. I don't know if anybody has any concept of what's involved in a DPS. It's a job that goes on all the time, 24/7. I had been the chair of that commission for 15 years before I got elected treasurer. I sat as a liaison for 4 years after elected. And the main reason was anybody that steps up to that job, it's a real commitment, and it's a long-term commitment. When Jim asked if I would consider moving over so that he could sit as chair, because he sat on my commission for a while, I couldn't get out of his way fast enough, because we need someone to carry it forward. As you could probably see, I'm not getting any younger. It's all history-based, everything that happens in that department, and it needs strong leadership. So with Mr. Kostick at the helm as chair and Jim Budney as the liaison, I have every confidence that it will move forward with or without me from this point on, and I want to thank both of them for the work they do. The commissions I sit on are Airport, Commerce Park, and Brownfield Authority. They're both staffed by the same people. Brownfield Authority basically is just getting rid of the nasty stuff that's in the ground, in the water, or on the ground, whether it be pollution or asbestos or that kind of stuff. And we have accounts and funding that help us do that. The chair of the Commerce Park Commission is Ron Moran. I believe the Commerce Park Commission started in, help me, do you remember? It's been 10 years, 8 years anyway. I sat on the commission originally, on the original commission. Ron Moran was the chair at that time. Chris Manns has also been a member of that commission since its inception. We've added John Rathall, who was once the treasurer of the community, and Walter Stoll. We have 2 vacancies on both of those commissions, Airport, Commerce Park, and Brownfield. I understand we have 1 member that will probably be appointed tonight. So we still have a position open. And of course, Mike Duker, who's our manager, stepped in after we lost Derek, and those were some big shoes to fill. Mike's done a great job. It's a big learning curve, and he's doing a wonderful job. Keep up the good work, Mike. I also have some vacancies in the next commission I sit in, and if anybody doesn't have a lot of time to invest, this would be a great commission. I've sat on this commission for 15 years, and I've had 2 meetings. So it's not a big time commitment, and that's the Construction Board of Appeals. James Morris is the chair of that. James was also the chair of the DPS Commission when I first got involved in 19-something. I'm not even sure when. Tony Kraus, Alan Anderson, Ala Harifi, and there is a vacancy. I think there's 2 vacancies on that board right now. So if anybody would like to volunteer, that'd be a great one to sit on or at least get your feet wet. I promise we'll probably have a couple of meetings because we got a couple of issues coming up. Other than that, I'd like to thank the community for its support. It was a great 4 years. I'm looking forward to another good 4 years. I welcome the new board. You should all be very happy. You've got a very strong board sitting up here. And I look forward to working with them for the next 4 years. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Treasurer Van Oss. Okay, we've got the Township Manager up next, Mr. Riem.
Thank you again, Mr. Supervisor. It's been touched on a few different times, and you'll see later on during the business meeting. Finance Director.
I didn't do it.
Hear what I have to say.
There you go. I didn't touch anything on it.
Finance Director.
I know we've been working on these today to make sure everything was working. Everything was working when we came in.
Finance Director will go and all of the proposals in relationship to the budget you're being asked to adopt later this evening. They'll also see a lot of the history, a lot of the trends, and you'll be asked to look at, she'll present how we've been able to accomplish and achieve what we have. And I want to say that I think that's the responsibility of that falls in a couple different arenas. One, as you know, we are a government by committee. All of those volunteers help make this an efficient operation. We do have a limited number of employees, but it's by the efforts of those employees and the management team, as well as our consultants who are in essence an extension of what we do, that we've been able to stay along those successful lines. So I just want to point that out, and when Ann goes through the budget presentations, I think you'll find those highlights very remarkable, and I want to draw that attention to the community as well. But this past year, we've seen some highs and some lows, and I'd like to just hit on some of those basic items. During the past year, we accepted the retirement of Wanda Ryan, who was the EMS coordinator in the fire department. The Open Space Committee had done a wood collection. Actually, we just had this past weekend the 3rd time, and that was an effort to have the residents have the ability to pick up some dead wood on some of the township open spaces and make it go to good use. And believe it or not, that is becoming a very popular program. So those are the types of things that the community and the volunteers bring to us. And we implemented the State of Michigan healthcare cost-sharing requirement for the employees. Deer culling was mentioned earlier, but we also began and continued working with the planning and development of the waterfront park at East River and Grovesville Parkway, which also included the Eagle Scout program for the Access Project. And I know the Recreation Department, the Recreation Commission, that you'll continue to see good things coming that way. As far as road ends go, we also accepted a road end at Stout Avenue, and to remind everyone, we adopted use ordinances for that as well. We began the contract negotiation for the hourly employees, which during the business meeting tonight you'll be asked to adopt that contract. And those items will be highlighted as well. And from an ordinance enforcement standpoint, we responded to an average of 59 complaints a month as compared to 62 last year. So things are slightly getting better. Okay. But what's not included in that number is, if those of you remember, DTE did a tree trimming program last year, the reliability program where they go through the neighborhoods and trim the wires. The township coordinated that, and that was mostly on the shoulder of one employee, Mr. Gray, who helped be the liaison between DTE and the residents. And those types of efforts from a public relations standpoint go a very long way. So those are the types of things that we do extra reach out. It was also mentioned that Mr. Thiel resigned from the township as Commerce Park Airfield Manager and accepted a position as the city administrator in Gibraltar. And the big shoes to fill were successfully done so by Michael Duker, our new Commerce Park Airfield Manager. So those are obviously some of the highs and some of the major things, but a very sad note, obviously, those of you recall that we had the passing of an employee, James Farrell, who died in an unfortunate work accident, and I'd just like to remind everyone to keep Jim, his family, and everyone involved in their prayers, and that would be appreciated. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ream. Again, Dale Ream is the Township Manager. And now it's my opportunity to shine. You've seen, trying to pick things up a little bit, kind of a recap on what your township does. You've heard from the trustees, the clerk, the treasurer, and the description of what the commissions and committees do. Again, that's where all the grunt work is done. By state law, townships have very few statutory responsibilities. The clerk is responsible for elections and record keeping. Treasurer is responsible for tax collection and tax disbursement, paying the bills. The other commissions and committees, we couldn't do them without the trustee liaisons who make sure the stuff gets done, that the board is apprised of what the commissions are doing, that the commissions are aware of what the boards respect. And for better or worse, everything else pretty much ends up under the supervisor. My job includes statutorily, I'm responsible for assessment, so that regardless whether you're happy with the assessment or not, we have to assess your properties. That allows the treasurer to collect the appropriate taxes on them. Also responsible for allowing you to complain about your taxes at board review. And I run these meetings to make sure the business gets done. And pretty much anything that isn't statutorily assigned to somebody else kind of ends up with me or whoever I can delegate it to, including, in our case, the budget this year with about a $5 million township operating budget, more than I'd like to take on by myself. I was ably assisted this year. I'm retired. Treasurer Van Oss is retired. Trustee Budney is retired, and they were there every day with Finance Director Darsnick and Township Manager Dale Ream, working out the best budget deal we could possibly swing for this township. So I want to thank all of them and the trustees who came in at the appropriate times and steered us in the right direction, and we got it done. Mr. Darsnick will be presenting that later. At this time, I'm going to go into my supervisor's annual report. Try to recap things from my viewpoint. So this is our first year for this board. Your newly elected Board of Trustees is midway through our first year in office. 2 new trustees on board. We're still doing our best to govern our township in the manner you've mandated. This annual report will serve to present the state of the township based on a combination of facts, observations, and educated opinions. My mission in my 5th year as your supervisor, the mission you re-elected me to execute remains unchanged, to preserve Grosse Ile Township as one of our country's most desirable residential communities. I can only measure that desirability through the value of our properties. Do people want to live here? The exodus of population from Michigan seems to have abated, but we must continue to convince current and future residents that Grosse Ile is clearly their best choice among places to live, work, and play in order to fill the empty homes, classrooms, and shops throughout our township. I'm convinced that a majority of you share in the pursuit of this objective, attracting and retaining the families that will call Grosse Ile their home and therefore make Grosse Ile properties more desirable. To that end, with the support of your Board of Trustees, I will continue to seek and implement every means to stabilize and increase our property values by continually identifying and improving those quality of life services and assets that distinguish us from other communities. We all have a stake in this, so I will constantly seek your inputs and advice. Looking back over the past year, thanks to the effort of both township residents and government, we maintained the quality of life on our island despite a very limited budget. Partial list of notable events. We said goodbye to 2 dedicated trustees and a long-serving clerk, all of whom worked diligently for your benefit. We also welcomed 3 highly qualified, experienced individuals to fill the positions, help steer our township. Our Airport Commerce Park manager accepted an offer as manager in a nearby city. We replaced him with an equally dedicated, talented individual who learns very quickly, is doing a commendable job. In last fall's election, you told us that public safety remains a service you're willing to support with your tax dollars. So our police department remains fully funded, and our current budget will not reach into reserves. You told us that we had secured enough open space, at least for the time being. You would rather save your dollars for other purposes. You also approved a road millage, so our Public Services Commission, among the busiest volunteers on the island, can now repair the most critical deficiencies in a timely manner. Ongoing repair of our roadways is and will continue to be a priority of this township. Finally, as I'm sure you're aware, we tragically lost a Treasury Township employee, resident, and friend in a water main repair accident. Mr. James Farrow remains in our thoughts and prayers, and be assured we are taking every measure necessary to ensure this never happens again. At the moment, one of my primary responsibilities as supervisor is developing our annual budget. Like most communities, we've suffered from declining revenues, but we have hopefully reversed the losses. However, even with the millages you have approved, we still remain approximately 5% below our peak revenues of 2009, with expenses increasing significantly. Yet, while other communities are facing far more serious financial crises and even takeovers by the state, Grosse Ile Township remains in reasonably sound condition. The dedication and hard work of your township staff and Board of Trustees, all committed to reducing expenses and keeping taxes as low as possible, have prevented any dramatic changes to our township's operation. All departments have worked in concert to reduce current and future costs, found ways to share assets, and overall continue to prove to the state, and more importantly to you, that we are responsible custodians of the public's resources. Getting back to basics, revenues determine what services your government can provide, and I cannot emphasize enough that for a residential community such as Grosse Ile, property value equals revenue. In order to secure reliable revenues, we must be proactive in attracting and retaining residents. We can do this by providing and promoting those amenities that distinguish us from other competing locations. Aside from our excellent schools and unequaled public safety and other amenity, we offer almost unlimited recreational opportunities, the heart of which is our Water's Edge Recreation Complex, one of the island's most treasured assets. We secured a grant to improve access to that complex, and thanks to Recreation Department staff and a very dedicated group of volunteers, golf, boating, and swimming will be available later this spring. Additionally, we are seeking additional funding for a multi-use ice rink, which promises inline skating this summer, ice skating next winter. Your Recreation Commission is also researching the possibility of a kayak launch at the marina, an increasingly popular form of recreation. Across the island from Water's Edge, an Eagle Scout project, aided by dozens of volunteer workers, has provided the township with its first public beach, with continued improvements planned at the site. Our island is also in the heart of the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, with the potential to draw visitors from around North America. With the apparent rebound in the auto industry, Michigan's population has stabilized, and hopefully new residents will find that the unique attributes our community offers make Grosse Ile the premier place to live, as my family did years ago. So looking forward, while our future has boundless opportunities, we also face challenges. A major threat looming over our township is an administrative consent order imposed upon us by the Department of Environmental Quality, which could have devastating financial consequences. We will continue to explore every responsible means to comply with the ever-increasing requirements of clean water, but we will not be coerced into limitless spending toward an undefined and therefore unattainable mandate. You, my fellow residents, have demonstrated an exceptional commitment to the environment through your funding of continuous improvements to our wastewater treatment system. We will find ways to mitigate this unwarranted threat to our resources. Another challenge will be the evaluation and enforcement of our blight ordinances. Long ignored, we'll begin by reminding all residents that a tidy community will attract other like-minded residents, preserving the value of all our homes and neighborhoods. I'm convinced that an education program will correct most of our problems involving unsightly properties. Fortunately, we also have some exciting opportunities. We should be expanding our very popular bike path system with an additional stretch along Horse Mill Road. We are completing a self-evaluation for a new state-sponsored program titled Promoting Active Communities. With all we have to offer, recreation, natural beauty, the surrounding river, certainly we can promote Grosse Ile as a wonderful home for an active lifestyle. Additionally, your public safety will remain intact, as both our police and fire department personnel have accepted cost-sharing responsibilities while operating under ever-tightening fiscal constraints. Please do not pass up any opportunity to thank these professionals for their dedication and contributions. I'm proud to state that we are and will remain one of America's safest communities, another opportunity to attract families to Grosse Ile. While still somewhat tenuous, we are seeing indications of continued economic recovery in Michigan and the promise of a brighter future statewide. Working with the board and township staff, I will reaffirm my commitment to you. Your township government will spend your tax dollars openly and wisely. We will make government transparent and responsive, and we will collaborate with other units of government when appropriate to both reduce costs and to benefit from economies of scale. I'll also need your commitment. Seize every opportunity to promote Grosse Ile to the families you would like to have as neighbors. Help us fix or improve any shortcomings you're aware of. If you know of another community performing a service or function in an exceptional manner, let us know. Let me know. I haven't forgotten that I work for you, and I truly appreciate any and all assistance in my quest to preserve and improve the best place I've ever called home. Let me close by stating I remain optimistic about our future, and I ran for re-election in order to help guide Grosse Ile toward a better tomorrow. Lest I repeat myself, we need to retain and attract residents in order to preserve and improve Grosse Ile. So let's commit to making this the community we want our friends to discover, the community we are proud to call home, and the community we want to leave for our children. Thank you for your confidence and support, and please remember, I never get tired of saying this, if you're lucky enough to live on Grosse Ile, you're lucky enough. So thanks for listening to that. Again, as I said, I get responsible for everything else. There are other volunteers in the community that have not been recognized just because of the status of their position. I'll begin with I am the liaison, the board liaison, statutorily assigned to the Downtown Development Authority. Let's see, recognize our DDA members. I have to start with my administrative assistant, Carol Canope. The chair is Ron Moran, who serves in a number of other positions. We're also staffed with Gloria Trudell, Peter Stachel, Rita Cole, Susan Harrison, Jay Frucci, and Eric Anderson. So we are working, unfortunately, on a very limited budget, but working to improve our Macomb Street downtown development area. And any input you would like to see, like how to fill some of the empty shops, get more business on Grosse Ile, let us know. We're always looking for new ideas. Additionally, you're served by, I mentioned earlier, the Board of Review. That's your first stop on complaining about your taxes. Staffed by the chair is Mr. Richard Nielsen, William Mead, Timothy Walker, who is with us tonight, and Shelley Schmidtke. Again, that's your first stop. If you think you are overtaxed or undertaxed, you can stop by and complain about that, too. Hasn't happened yet. We also, let's see, Island beautification, that has to be recognized, and we don't have a liaison to that, but let me read the members. Art Kester is the chair. He's here tonight. Art is involved in everything, and take care of yourself, Art. But he's supported by Pam Frucci, Linda Tilley, Irma Slimko, Michelle Babcock, Julia Roscoe, Brian Medford, and Richard Eifert. I'm hoping the Airport Advisory Commission, Recently, again, we're short a pilot member, so I'm trying to talk Eric into being the liaison for that, but it may have to be me, because Eric is, I'm getting about as much time out of him as I can count on. The Airport Advisory Committee makes safety recommendations for the running of our airport, chaired by Alan Anderson, supported by Mark Glovis, Scott Smith, Carl Rigg, Pam Brumal, and administratively assisted by the Airport Commerce Park manager, Mike Duker. Additionally, my other jobs, I represent the township to the Downriver Community Conference, Downriver Mutual Aid. My alternate is Lauren Smith. And also at the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, supported by my alternate, Mr. Walt Posiask. So I do stay busy. I love every second of it, almost every second of it. And I want to thank, we got a good crowd tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming. So that will conclude, unless I've missed something, my address. Thanks for being here tonight. You know a little bit more about how your township runs, who runs it, and who your neighbors are. This time, if there are any other comments from the board, I'll entertain those. Otherwise, we'll open up to public comment. With none from the board, we will, and obviously we're running a little bit late, but I'll open it up to public comment at this time. The usual 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself. If you haven't introduced yourself to your neighbor, please do that. But if anyone wants to take a mic, here's your opportunity. Say what a great job we're doing. You could say it's time to get us out of here. Or we can adjourn this meeting and we'll take a short break and go to the business meeting. No offers for public comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, the motion is Mr. Budney, and who did I get a support from? Seconded by Trustee Malvesto. Let's, those in favor of adjourning the annual meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None offered. I'll call the meeting adjourned at 8:22. Let's reconvene at 8:30 and start the business meeting. Thanks for coming.